Darth Vader's first act in his new armor had nothing to do with the Jedi or the Empire. He woke on a surgical table on Coruscant, remembered choking Padme Amidala on Mustafar, and threw Emperor Palpatine into the nearest wall with the Force. He tore apart every medical droid in the operating room, and when Palpatine rose from the floor, the Emperor smirked. The armor keeping Vader alive offered nothing close to comfort. Without the helmet's neural connection, he felt every wound at full volume. In the stumps where his legs ended, the ruin where his arms had been, raw skin grinding against plates of metal and plasteel. An automated arm lowered the helmet over his head. Needles in the lining stabbed into the flesh at the base of his spine and the crown of his skull, wiring his nervous system into the suit's circuitry. Only then did the phantom pain of his missing limbs go quiet, replaced by the hum of motors and the steady rhythm of mechanical breathing. He had once meditated to find peace as a Jedi. Now he sat in the dark and sharpened his anger, feeding on every ache the armor pressed into his skin. Over time, he stopped resenting the shell around him. The suit cut him off from warmth and touch and everything else in the galaxy, and he came to see the isolation as freedom that let him focus on the Force alone. The sound of the respirator terrified everyone within earshot, and Vader treated their fear as one more weapon in an arsenal that no longer included a lightsaber. He had lost his Jedi blade on Mustafar, and the weapon now rested somewhere in the Outer Rim with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Palpatine could have given Vader any of the thousands of lightsabers recovered from dead Jedi after Order 66, but the Emperor chose not to. A Sith had to earn a red blade by killing a Jedi, taking their kyber crystal and pouring enough rage into the stone to turn it crimson. Palpatine sent Vader to hunt, and the trail led to a river moon called Al-Dalim. Hirak and Phila had lived there in isolation for years, a Jedi Master who specialized in combat. He had taken the Barash Vow, a form of penance that severed all ties with the Jedi Order. Because Infila had no contact with the Order when Palpatine issued Order 66, the clones never came for him, and he had spent those years keeping his lightsaber skills razor sharp. When Vader arrived on the river moon, Infila beat him so badly that he threw the Sith Lord off a cliff, leaving Vader's armor cracked open and his mechanical limbs barely working at the base of a mountain. Vader dragged what was left of his body to a training droid nearby and ripped the machine apart with the Force, grafting its components onto his own shattered frame. The repairs were crude, bolted metal over broken metal, but they held long enough for a second try. The rematch went differently because Vader stopped fighting fair. He breached the dam above Ambalar City, sending a wall of water towards the civilian population below. Infila dropped his guard and reached out with the Force to hold back the flood, straining to protect the people he had sworn to defend. While the Jedi's concentration held the water in place, Vader stole the lightsaber from his grip, seized Infila with the Force, and hurled him off the dam into the flood below. The flood crashed through the city. The people below drowned. On Palpatine's orders, Vader carried the stolen weapon to Mustafar, back to the same volcanic world where Obi-Wan Kenobi had cut him apart. Deep inside a cave soaked in dark side energy, he dismantled the hilt and placed the green kyber crystal on a stone altar. The Sith ritual, called bleeding, required him to pour his anger and hatred into the crystal until it bent to his will. The crystal fought back and dragged Vader into a vision of a life he could still choose. It was one where he killed Palpatine, returned to the Jedi, and knelt before Obi-Wan Kenobi to ask for forgiveness. Vader saw what his life could have been, stretched out in front of him like a road he had already passed, and he turned away. He crushed the crystal under the dark side until the green light bled to red. Back on Coruscant, he forced his way into Palpatine's throne room and hurled 2 royal guards through the transparent steel windows before kneeling to present the weapon. The curved hilt from Infila would later shatter during an assassination attempt, but Vader saved the crystal and built a new hilt around it, the design that he would carry for the rest of his life. Palpatine had already built the next cage around Vader. It was a unit called the Inquisitors, which was made up of former Jedi who turned to the dark side through coercion and pain. A former Jedi Temple guard called the Grand Inquisitor led them day to day, but Vader was their real master. Their single purpose was hunting down any Jedi who had survived Order 66. Vader trained them the way Palpatine had trained him, which was through injury. During lightsaber drills in a district of Coruscant known as the Works, he sliced off the Sixth Brother's left arm and ordered the wounded Inquisitor to keep fighting. The Grand Inquisitor questioned the method, and Vader answered that the problem ran deeper than technique. He explained that every Inquisitor fought defensively, the way the Jedi had taught them, and a defensive fighter would never run down a Jedi on the move. He cut off hands, blinded eyes, and left his students on the training floor with wounds that sent them straight to the medical bay, because the lesson never changed. Pain was a resource. One Inquisitor's initiation told a different kind of story. A former Jedi named Escatakaris later known as the 13th Sister, fought Vader with more creativity than anyone before her. She threw another Inquisitor at Vader as a distraction, drove a hidden vibroblade at his midsection, and in the same motion, reached for the wiring at the back of his helmet, yanking hard enough to choke his respirator for several seconds. Vader caught her hand and crushed every bone in it until she dropped the knife, then lifted her into the air by ruined fist and told her the attempt was not good enough before walking away. Iskat would later come to understand that Vader had been holding back in every session, even the ones where Inquisitors lost limbs. The Inquisitors did not trust one another, and Vader made sure of it. Every one of them carried scars from training, and every one of them knew that weakness meant death or replacement. Attachments between Inquisitors were treated the same way as Jedi sympathies. When Vader sensed an emotional bond between Iskat and a Twi'lek Inquisitor named Tualon, he attacked them both without warning, telling them the attachment was a flaw, not a strength. Iskat and Tualon ran, turned, and tried to fight Vader together, and he killed them both by turning their own lightsabers against them with the Force. A former Jedi Council member named Eth Koth had just died because concern for his infant daughter broke his concentration during a duel, and Vader expected the lesson to be obvious. Koth's death had been Vader's handiwork. After leaving the Order, Koth had married and fathered a child in hiding. Vader tracked him there and dueled him while 3 Inquisitors waited outside the door. During the fight, Vader taunted Koth, telling him that his fear and anger gave him more strength than the Jedi Order had ever allowed. Koth held his own until one of the Inquisitors returned with his newborn daughter. The moment his eyes moved to the child, Vader drove his lightsaber through Koth's back and took the infant and gave the child to a pair of masked attendants at the Inquisitories headquarters. The Inquisitories spent years hunting survivors across the galaxy, but Jocasta Nu, the Jedi Temple's chief librarian for decades, had escaped Order 66 by disappearing into the Outer Rim. She came back to Coruscant on her own, not to fight, but to retrieve a single artifact hidden in the temple archives. It was a kyber memory crystal containing the names and locations of every known Force-sensitive child in the galaxy. Her plan was to use the list to rebuild the Jedi Order in secret, one student at a time. Palpatine wanted the crystal for the opposite reason. The Emperor intended to find those children and turn them into dark side operatives, a fresh generation of servants who could one day replace Vader if he proved insufficient. Vader did not know any of that when Palpatine ordered him and the Grand Inquisitor to capture Nu alive. They cornered her in the ruins of the temple archives. Nu fought with a lightsaber rifle, a weapon that used her own lightsaber as a power source to fire concentrated beams of energy, and she nearly brought Vader down with it before the rifle burned through its ammunition and the clones closed in. After her capture, Nu looked at Vader's fighting style and called him by his real name, addressing him as Anakin Skywalker in front of the troops. She told him that Palpatine saw him as disposable, that the crystal was proof the Emperor planned to breed replacements, and that Vader was only useful until a better version came along. Vader killed her, destroyed the crystal, and staged her death to look like a ship crash, all without Palpatine's knowledge. He had no interest in protecting the children on the list. He saw a threat to his own position and removed it before the Emperor could put the data to use. On most missions, Palpatine sent Vader alone, but when a Twi'lek resistance fighter named Shan Syndulla pushed the Free Ryloth movement far enough to raid Imperial supply lines, the Emperor traveled to Ryloth in person and brought Vader with him. The rebels saw the trip as a chance to kill them both. Before the Emperor's cruiser reached the planet, the rebels hijacked an Imperial weapons transport and fled into deep space. Vader chased the ship in a starfighter squadron. When the transport shields dropped, he depressurized his own cockpit, crashed his interceptor directly into the transport's hull, and pulled his body through the torn metal into the corridors. He killed every rebel aboard alone, deflecting blaster bolts with his lightsaber and crushing throats with the Force while the crew died around him. When it was over, he picked up a dead man's comlink and opened the channel. The only sound he sent to the rebels listening on the other end was the rhythm of his own breathing, steady and unhurried, until he finally spoke. On Ryloth, the situation got worse. The rebels destroyed the Emperor's Star Destroyer and forced Palpatine and Vader to crash land in the wilderness with only 2 royal guards for protection. When a swarm of Lilacs, Armored insectoid predators with spiked shells and mandibles thick enough to snap bone came through the tree line. Vader and Palpatine drew their lightsabers and fought side by side. Vader seized one creature with the Force and flung it into a tree trunk hard enough to crack the shell open, while Palpatine raised both hands and sent jagged lines of Force lightning through two more, lifting them off the ground and cooking them in their own carapaces. The two of them moved forward together, cutting and spinning, severing legs and tentacles and heads until nothing around them was still moving. When they turned around, the royal guards were standing frozen with their rifles pointed at the ground. Palpatine often called Vader a friend, though Vader suspected the word was chosen to remind them both of the distance between master and apprentice. The armor Vader wore used technology decades behind what the galaxy could offer, and a detailed scan of its internals would have shown components no better than a maintenance droid's. Palpatine had built the suit to hurt, because a body in constant pain fed the dark side more reliably than a comfortable one. Later, sitting across a campfire in the Ryloth wilderness, Palpatine asked whether Vader had been a traitor, naming the Jedi, Padme, and Obi-Wan among those he had betrayed. Vader answered that he had. The question carried weight because Palpatine had warned Vader early in their partnership that every Sith apprentice eventually tried to kill their master. Both of them knew the arrangement of loyalty from the apprentice, strength from the master, and the moment either one failed, the other was bound to end it. Vader told Palpatine that his old life held no pull over him, that he regarded his past with contempt, and that every painful memory only sharpened the anger he carried now. Palpatine watched Vader say all of that, and then the Force dragged Vader into a meditation he did not choose. It came as a cascade of images from his old life. The younglings in the Jedi Temple staring up at him before he cut them down, the fires of Mustafar, the hatred he still carried for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and underneath everything, repeating like a heartbeat, the sound of Padme Amidala screaming his name. When a clone captain nearby removed his helmet, Vader saw the same scarred face he had fought beside for years, and names surfaced from somewhere buried. Rex, Cody, Fives, Echo. A young Twi'lek orphan named Drua found them in the wilderness and led them to her village. Her mother had died. She had never known her father. Palpatine quietly noted the resemblance to Vader's own childhood, and the comparison sent Vader's memory back to his mother on Tatooine, a slave who had died at the hands of Tusken Raiders. He remembered killing every last one of them. After the battle with Syndulla's forces ended and the rebel leader escaped, Palpatine gave Vader one last instruction. He ordered Vader into the cave where Drua and the other villagers had taken shelter, to kill them all and leave no witnesses behind. Vader walked into the dark with his lightsaber lit, and his mind went somewhere else, back to another day when he had walked into the Jedi Temple to kill the younglings inside. Palpatine's laughter followed him into that cave, and it stayed in his ears longer than the screaming did. Vader carried the order out and returned to his master's side, and when he later asked the Emperor for a world of his own, he chose Mustafar. Palpatine granted the request and gave Vader a gift. It was the mask of an ancient Sith Lord named Darth Momin, whose consciousness had survived for centuries inside the artifact. The mask seized one of Vader's Imperial officers and began drawing architectural plans before Vader could intervene. After examining the designs, Vader fed the mask a Mustafarian host body and let Momin work. Momin told Vader the fortress would tune the dark side energy flowing beneath Mustafar's surface and open a doorway between life and death, and that on the other side, Vader would find Padme. 8 versions of the fortress burned or shattered under Mustafar's volcanic conditions before the 9th held. A dark tower rose above the lava fields, and the cave system beneath it began channeling energy from the planet's core. While Vader fought off an uprising of Mustafarians who sensed the disturbance on their planet, Momin stepped through the portal and came out on the other side in a body of flesh and bone, alive for the first time in centuries. Momin taunted Vader during the duel that followed, mocking his injuries and his fixation on a dead woman. He severed Vader's prosthetic sword arm before Vader ended the fight by pinning him to the wall with a stone slab and crushing him. With Momin dead, Vader opened the portal alone. His body stayed behind in the meditation chamber while his consciousness walked through a wasteland filled with doorways into his own past. He saw his mother pregnant on Tatooine, his boyhood shadow stretching into the shape of the armor he now wore, and the faces of everyone from a life that no longer belonged to him: Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Padme. He cut through crowds of dead Jedi to reach the far end, and when he found Padme standing on a balcony, He asked her to come with him. She told him Anakin Skywalker was dead and fell backward off the ledge. Lightning tore her from the air. A lone figure threw Vader out of the vision, and the doorway sealed behind him. Vader sat in the meditation chamber of a fortress built on lava, and Padme was not in it. Years after the portal on Mustafar sealed shut, Palpatine sent Vader to a planet called Batuu on a joint mission with Grand Admiral Thrawn. The assignment had a layer Vader did not see at first. Batuu sat near the unknown regions, in the same stretch of space where Anakin Skywalker had once gone searching for Padme during the Clone Wars. Palpatine knew the connection and had chosen the location deliberately. During the mission, Thrawn referred to Anakin Skywalker by name and asked Vader to honor a debt from their shared history. Vader's lightsaber twitched at his belt, reacting through the Force to the anger that hit him the moment Thrawn spoke the name. Vader told Thrawn that the Jedi who once carried that name no longer existed. Thrawn accepted the answer with a slight bow, but he kept referencing their shared past throughout the mission, using words like balance and debt and service that kept pulling at memories Vader did not want surfacing. Years before Batuu, on Ryloth, before walking into the cave to kill the villagers, Vader had executed a rebel fighter named Esval, one of Cham Syndulla's most dedicated soldiers. She told Vader that she hated him and everything he stood for, but that when she killed out of love. Vader told her he knew exactly what she meant, and then he took her head with his lightsaber. For more than a decade after Order 66, Ahsoka Tano, Anakin Skywalker's apprentice during the Clone Wars, had lived without the connection she once shared with him through the Force. The place where his presence had been felt like a severed wire that no longer carried current. She heard rumors of a masked figure in the Emperor's service, but she had no confirmation of who or what the figure was, and she was not looking for answers. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin's former Jedi Master, found his answer first. He had trained Anakin Skywalker since the boy was 9 years old. Years after leaving Vader burning on the banks of a lava river, Kenobi had been living in hiding on Tatooine, watching over a boy he had carried there as an infant. When Vader tracked Kenobi down and the two of them fought again, Kenobi reconnected with the Force deeply enough to win the duel. Kenobi's blade broke through the right side of Vader's helmet, and through the gap, the scarred face of the man he had trained since childhood stared back at him. The respirator sputtered and caught, and Vader's voice split in two. One was the deep bass of the helmet speakers, and underneath, something raw and younger that bled through the broken machine. Vader told Kenobi that the failure was not his, that Vader had been the one who killed Anakin Skywalker. Kenobi told him that his friend was truly dead, called him Darth instead of Anakin for the first time, and walked away. On the Sith world of Malachor, years after the duel with Kenobi, Vader's former apprentice caught up with him. Ahsoka Tano had joined a cell of rebels fighting the Empire, and when their search for knowledge led them to a Sith temple buried beneath Malachor's surface, Vader followed them there. During the fight that followed, Ahsoka sliced through the left side of Vader's helmet, and the voice modulator failed. Anakin's voice came through the crack, layered under Vader's, calling her by name. Ahsoka told Vader she would not leave him again. For a long moment, Vader did not answer, and the only sound between them was the crack of stone and the wheeze of his damaged respirator. He told her she would die. She stayed behind in the collapsing temple, and Vader limped out of the wreckage alone. Obi-Wan had cracked the right side of the mask, and Ahsoka had cracked the left, and neither of them brought Anakin Skywalker back. Years later, on the second Death Star, Vader's son would remove the entire helmet by hand, not with a blade, but with grief, and the face underneath would finally answer to its own name. On a rebel cruiser above the planet Scarif, in the final hours before the war that would end the Empire, Vader stepped into a narrow corridor with his lightsaber lit. The red blade and glow of his chest panel were the only light in the hallway. He cut through the rebel soldiers in front of him without speaking, and the only sound between the screams was the breathing. Padme, or whatever the dark side had shown him wearing her face inside the fortress, has told him the man she loved was gone. For 20 years, the armor kept breathing as though she were right. On a moisture farm on Tatooine, a boy named Luke Skywalker was watching the sun set, and Vader did not know he was alive. Quick note before you go, members get early access and a few videos that stay off the main channel. If that's interesting, the link is in the description. Otherwise, here's another video about the real reason Vader left Mustafar that you might like.